What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 712. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line, all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, you got the AC blasting or what?
Yes, this has been a topic of conversation between me, you, and Chian, where you Seattleites, well, I can't speak for you, but Chian at least doesn't have AC, and that's true of many people in Seattle. It's just not a thing you typically needed. But here in Denver, we got AC, and we love it because it gets pretty hot here.
Yeah, I do happen to have it in the place I live now, but like I grew up without it the whole time. Nobody had it here, but it's definitely changed. It's so hot here in the summer now. I think that those days are over, and we're going to see everybody start to pick it up. And meanwhile, Paul is melting in his living room. I feel bad for him. It is. We've had like kind of the hot week here, so really, really tough if you don't have AC. I think maybe I'll invite him over, and he can just work from here for a while because that's pretty tough. Really fun show lined up today, Luis. We've got the first of a series that we're going to do about Vintage Cube. And we're also going to talk about the changes and the current status or state of the Magic Online Vintage Cube, because it is back up again. And our friend Ryan Spain, original co-host of the show, put up an article I will link to in the show notes as well, with the philosophy and actual changes to the cube, of which there were many. So that's cool. And it'll give us a good snapshot of kind of how things look with Vintage Cube these days. And really, I just want to lean on the fact that you've been doing so much vintage cubing. You know, I was talking to you earlier and you said, look, if this is a PT format, you know, I would feel, you know, extremely prepared for it. Right. And I want to leverage that. And so what we're going to do for the other part of the show today is we're going to do a set review of sorts on the Vintage Cube. Now, we're not going to do all the colors at once. We're going to break them up by chunks of colors. We're going to do white today. And it's going to be for advanced players. We're not going to treat it as the entry level to the Vintage Cube. This is going to be for people who've played it and who know what it is. And we're going to go card by card, and we're going to nail down how good is the card? How desirable is it? Where does it fit? What kind of decks want to actually run it? And then what are the things to look out for when you have the card? Meaning, what kind of combos or synergies exist with the card that maybe aren't as obvious at first blush. So we're going to do that for white today, and it's going to be awesome. We want to thank our patrons first. Of course, patreon.com/limited resources is where you can find everything related to the show. Thanks for your support over there. We really do appreciate it. We're going to do where did it go? There it is. Our Patreon question of the week here. And this one has to do with tournament Magic. And it's from David, who says, hey, Marshall and LSV, I've recently gotten back into playing Magic competitively and have qualified for the regional championship in Atlanta. I'm nervous as I haven't played in a big event like this since GPs back in the day. And, you know, GPs, that was a while ago now. Like,
you're killing me. Back in the day.
Back in the day. I read that too, and I thought, well, come on. But it's like, no, that's actually true, right? It's been 4 or 5 years now, you know, since GPs have been on the regular circuit. So, David's got a point here, and he says, and I never had an invitational event where I know everyone there will be a top-notch player. So, you know, this isn't just a GP as well. This is one that you have to earn your way into. So he knows he's going to be facing down stiff competition. What advice do you have for big events like this in terms of logistics and keeping your cool?
Okay, that's two questions, I guess. Mm-hmm. One is logistics. If you've played Grand Prix, then I think you'll actually fit in well with the regional championship. I don't think you should consider it an invitational event where everyone's a top-notch player. Not to say that people aren't going to be good there. It's a lot closer to a Grand Prix than a Pro Tour. I would consider a Pro Tour an invitational event where everyone is a top-notch player, basically guaranteed. The regional championships cast a wide enough net. There's enough 10-person RCQs that, like, it's more akin to like playing like day 1.5 of a Grand Prix. You know, where everyone there's a competitive player and a serious player, and the average play skill at this point is quite high. Like, you know, the average player these days is a lot better than 10 years ago. But if you've been to a Grand Prix, you will be able to hang with this. There's like the slight extra wrinkle of like, you need to have a dream hack badge and get in. But, I've been to these Magic cons. It's really not that big of a deal. So logistic wise, I think you will be fine. Like, you're going to go to the tournament, you're going to have your deck, you're going to have submitted your deck list on MTG Melee. That's like a new thing. And it's going to be, kind of what you're used to. As far as keeping your cool, I definitely understand that, especially since it's been a couple of years since anyone's really played in these kinds of events. And what I would recommend, I guess, is just realize that your goal is show up at the tournament and play the best Magic you can. And you aren't going to be playing against a bunch of stone cold killers. You're going to be playing against a bunch of other competitive Magic players who are there to try to win. But you're not going to play against a Pro Tour champion every round. You deserve to be there just as much as anyone else. You earned your slot there. So I think that as long as you practice well and are prepared for the tournament, which if you're going to the trouble of A, qualifying through an RCQ, and B, flying to this or driving to this event, you're gonna be totally fine. The formats for these are always announced so far in advance and often follow the qualifying season to the point where this isn't a set's released and a week later you're playing in a regional championship. You have enough time to make a good deck decision and practice it well enough. And once you do that, I think you'll be fine. Playing online always helps. I still think that playing online, the best thing that it's ever done for me is teach me how to lose over and over and over again. Because I mean, there was a day, there are the days where I didn't play online, right? Where I hadn't really gotten into Magic online. And I was like, oh, I'm going to practice for this PTQ. I'll play 7 matches and then I'll play in the PTQ. Magic Online blew it out of the water. So now I was actually losing more matches than I'd even dream of playing before.
Exactly.
And you get used to it and you realize, you know what? You lose a match of Magic and it's okay. So go to the tournament, do your best, play a deck that you enjoy, well, and hope that the luck gods are on your side because it takes luck to win every single tournament.
Yeah, the logistical side, the one mistake that I saw people make the most, I think, just from a logistics perspective, was just not attending to rest, right, to getting enough sleep and stuff. And the mistake that I saw them make was usually fell into 2 categories. One, just being dumb, right? Just being like, I'm just going to go out and we're just going to do all this stuff. And then I'm going to wake up on 4 hours of sleep and I'll be fine at the tournament. That's dumb. Like that is not how human brains work. And you're going to have a real tough time if you make that decision. And it kind of shows that your priorities, lie more with having fun than trying to do well at the tournament. Fair enough. But the other one is not properly estimating time. Right? It's like, oh, well, it's 7:30 and we need to get dinner and we'll go back to the hotel and get to sleep. And it's like getting your friend group together, finding a place to eat, waiting at the restaurant to eat, waiting for everybody to figure out how they're going to chop up the bill or pay the stuff, getting an Uber again with 8 people back to the hotel, making sure that, I didn't actually unpack, or I need to do this, or I didn't sleeve up my deck for tomorrow. And next thing you know, it's 12:30. Right. And you're like, crap, I got to get up at 7, to get over to the event site or whatever. And, okay, that's maybe enough sleep, but you had it in your head when you left the airport or the site where the tournament's at that you were going to be, chilling out at 10 and getting ready for bed at 11 or whatever. And always add like 50% to every one of your estimations and you'll end up closer to the mark than not.
Just the entire day for everything.
Yeah, it's like that for every single, like, I don't care if it's I got to go to the bathroom or I want to go grab a bite, like just keep adding 50% of time. One thing I did want to talk about, Luis, just because why not, was what you said about Magic Online and how it kind of trains you to like understand the scale of it. And I had a very similar thing happen to me with poker, where I had primarily played live and then I transitioned to online poker where you can play way more hands and you in fact can play multiple tables at the same time. And it was really eye-opening for me when I went back because they banned it. They banned online poker. And so I went back to playing live. Really eye-opening though, because the hands come so quickly that you don't really feel attached to any of them, right? There's no like single, like, to translate it for Magic, there's no single game or match that feels like it has outsized importance when you get to play so many. It's, similar to if you draft on Arena and you're playing best of ones, like any one game is kind of like whatever. Like, yeah, you might not be happy you lost it or you might be happy you won it, but they all just kind of blur together because you're just like play again, play again, play again, play again. And that's how playing hands on on online poker worked. they come so quickly that you're just like, okay, I took a bad beat next, and you just reload and you just move on. And there really wasn't any emotional connection because you just knew you were going to get another hand in 5 seconds anyway. But
I mean, I remember, by the way, in being in college, watching one of my friends who was getting into poker. This is about that same time, 2004-ish or whatever, and watching him play 10 tables at once of limit, low limit hold'em, and it was just like, oh wow, you were getting the reps in here. You're not thinking much each hand, but you kind of know what you're doing. You're getting the reps in, and this is just brute forcing. Yeah,
and I used to play 9 tables on one monitor because I could fit 3x3, and then on the other monitor, I would play 4 tables or 2 if they're depending on how many were going of a different game of Omaha 8 high-low split. So I'm playing like I don't even know if I could do that now. Like my brain might melt. But again, it's like what you said, you're going so quickly and you're getting these reps in. But I remember looking at my hand histories because that's what I would do then. Or if I was just playing a couple of tables or whatever, and I would be like, wow, I lost like 5 all-ins in a row. That was bad. But I'm just like, reload, off we go again. And I remember thinking when I got back to the live tables, if I lost 5 of those, the 5 times tonight that I choose to go in all in and I lose every single one of those, it hits so different in real life. When you're sitting there and you only get, estimated maybe like 30 hands per hour, something like that on a live table. And if you miss them, it's like your whole night. If you just don't hit, even if you were happy with your play, even if you go back and go, yeah, that was fine. It really did stand out. And it made me more resilient at the live table because I viewed things as a much bigger picture than just this evening, this one setting that I had. It also just made me go, man, how am I ever going to get through the variance? Because, you take these huge swings online and if I translate those to the live table, it's like, well, this could have been 4 weeks of me just kind of running not that good, and then, getting back out of it later. Anyway, that was something that just came up in that conversation there. Thanks to the question from David. We do appreciate it. All right, let's do a Vintage Cube crack-a-pack here, Luis.
I love it.
We do love Vintage Cube here. I'm sure that our listeners are aware of it, but I mean, we could get on the pedestal here and sing the praises.
I mean, saying we love Vintage Cube is like understating it.
It really is.
Vintage Cube is literally my favorite way to play Magic, with the one exception of sitting down for a draft at the Pro Tour.
Mm-hmm.
And I have gotten to Vintage Cube with basically all great players more than I ever have in my life. This actually is exactly like going from playing Magic at the local store to playing Magic online. This is going at me cubing once or twice a month when I can get my friends here in Denver together, which is honestly less than once a month, actually. I'm even exaggerating there.
Right.
To just on tap, on demand. It's like, oh, let's do a pod with Kenji and Nathan Stewart and, Jesse Hampton and Sandy Dog, the legend, and like all of these people. And just like, it's unbelievable. It's like a Magic renaissance. I'm more happy and invested playing Magic than I have been in probably 5 years.
Yeah. Like I can tell watching you play just how engaged you are with it. And by the way, for those of you, and I mean, shame on you, honestly, if you're not watching Luis's YouTube channel, but what he's referring to is the server and setup that Alpha Frog set up quite a while ago, actually. But it's just, I mean, I'm assuming that people watching you play it on your YouTube channel garnered all the attention, but now all of a sudden, there's enough people to fire high level. The people he just named, Sandy Dog's a GP champ.
I was in the booth for that.
Right. Yeah. That was fun. Jesse Hampton's a PT top 8er, and Ely Cassis plays in there. There's another champ, right? You just go down the line and it's either cube nuts, right? Like aficionados that are like all about cube. And, that's kind of like, that's the thing that they chose to dedicate their time to. So maybe their technical play isn't on the level of the super high end, like PTGP players, but they know the cube so well. They know all the tricks. They know all the decks that it makes up for it. And then guys, of course, like you, Luis, in there too, like absolute goats. I saw Tom Martell in there. There's another champ. Right.
Let's leave a little room between the absolute goats and starting the sentence with Tom Martell. So
come on, man. Don't be mean to him. I saw Matt Lindy in there, national champ. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Matt Lindy is a blast from the past. That was awesome. The 98 US national champion World's Top Eighter. He has one of those gold border Worlds decks.
So sweet, right? And he's coming out of the woodwork to battle with you guys. But anyway, and what Luis is talking about is that those have been popping off, where he can sit down and do, vintage cube money drafts basically on demand and against the type of players that you would actually
just
find.
Going nuts for some reason.
Did she go crazy? Well, Julie loves vintage cube too, right? I can't get enough. But, against the type of players that you would actually find back in the day at the PT at 12:30 at night, wandering around looking for team drafts, right? And, now you can replicate that, but in the best format as well. And so, with that, Luis has been playing a heck of a lot. And if you want to watch him play and see how he does it, you can go on his YouTube channel. But we're going to be using the knowledge and the experience that he's gained after having done, really more cube drafts, especially against good players, than probably anybody's ever done at this point. I mean, I don't know how you could replicate this. I don't feel like, unless there's a Pro Tour testing house that had a cube and just dedicated their time to that, how this could really come about. So really cool. We're going to do a crack-a-pack right now. And I'm totally stealing this, by the way, Luis. I'm stealing it from Kenji from New Matanami. I just pulled up one of his latest videos because, by the way, he has also been participating in these drafts. I'm just going to steal one of his pack one, pick one. So thanks, Kenji. So first card out is Teferi Time Raveler. That's a 3-mana Teferi.
I don't mind taking this early. I think that Teferi Time Raveler, there's basically when I, at the risk of launching into it too early, there's different tiers of cube cards. There's like the tier 0 cards, right? Black Lotus, Time Walk, Ancestral Soul Ring, Mana Crypt. And the tail end of that is like Minsk and Boo or something like that. And then there's like the tier 1 cards, which are like Parallax Wave, MVP recently, Swords to Plowshares, Mind Twists, that sort of thing, Strip Mine. Teferi Time Raveler is in a solid like tier 1.5, where if you take it early, it's like taking a Mind Raveler, a Ponder, taking something like Thoughtseize, or Thoughtseize is even actually a little higher, but Lightning Bolt, like one of the cards where it's like you take this, it's like, here's a perfect example. It's like if you opened a pack of Lord of the Rings and you're first picking Claim the Precious. It's you're first picking the best common. It's not as good as the best uncommons, the Minsky Boos, or the best rares, Black Lotus or whatever. But you don't walk away feeling like you got cheated. So yeah, I hope not to first pick a Teferi Time Raveler, but it's not like I feel like it's a disaster if you do. Yeah,
and as we talk about these cards also, there's a lot of them that we like to talk about ceilings and floors on cards, right? And Teferi Time Raveler is a classic high floor, not super high ceiling, right? There's no sick combos with it. It'll shut down a couple of cool things sometimes, but
there's a couple combos. There's
what is the sick combo?
The sick combo is casting a draw 7 at the end of their turn. That is a pretty sick combo.
That's pretty good. I just see that just doesn't get to sick combo for me. Like sick combos win the game, right? Like there are combos in this cube that win the game, and this does not have that. And that's what I meant by top tier.
I guess Spell Queller's not in the cube anymore. If they kill your Spell Queller when you have a Teferi in play, they don't get to cast their spell or whatever.
Right, or if they have something suspended. Like these are all great, right? But they're not oh my God, right?
So really the ceiling on Teferi is you play against a blue deck that has a bunch of counters, you slip this through and their deck gets shut down. That's the actual ceiling.
That is I think we've both been on the bad end of that. So anyway, so that's a good start. Next one up, Blade Splicer.
Yeah, and you know what? This might sound weird if you haven't watched me cube in a while, but this is in consideration. I would take Teferi over Blade Splicer, but Blade Splicer goes from a card which I think a lot of people would just not even look at in a pack to one where I'm like, ooh, a Blade Splicer. This is a treat getting this 5th, It's a real card. It's got a ton of little micro synergies, right? Ways to blink it. It puts an artifact into play for things that care about that. And you can get it with Recruiter of the Guard. It's just, also it's in one of the best colors. White is actually one of the best colors. So I like to be a Blade Splicer, though I like Teferi more.
We should note, by the way, that this is a modified version of the cube that Kenji's drafting here. So we'll note if there's a card that's not in the regular cube.
What day is this from? Is this before the Magic Online cube?
Yeah, this was from 1 day ago.
Oh, it's probably the Magic Online cube then.
It does say Vintage Cube Team Draft though. Did
Yeah,
you guys?
because as soon as the cube list went out, we switched to the Magic Online cube.
Did not know that. Okay, then then this probably is Phyrexian Nissa in the cube?
It's in both.
Okay. Well then, how about Karmic Guide?
Also both, yeah.
Okay, good. So then this probably is that cube. All right. Next is Dismember.
Oh, this is nice. So Dismember is again a harbinger of like kind of the modern age of cube, or the 2023 cube, where creature removal is actually good. It's good to have creature removal in your deck. You're playing against a lot of decks with creatures. Even the combo oriented decks have creatures, and I think that I would take. I think that I would take Dismember pretty highly, especially because it's colorless. Right. You don't have to commit to anything, and not committing is still good even in cube. It's not quite the same as it would be in something like a normal draft where like you end up in 2 colors. If you get it wrong, you kind of, get really hosed on playables. But being able to take first pick Dismember and then second pick, like imagine if you first pick Teferi and then second pick there's Fury, which is like a premium card.
Right.
You could still take Fury. Obviously, you can play 3 colors in cube. That happens a lot, but you don't feel like great about it. And if you take Dismember and then second pick Fury, you feel awesome.
Right. And Dismember is in that uppermost tier of removal, right? It's like Swords of Plowshares, Path to Exile, Dismember, Lightning Bolt would be
Swords, Dismember, Lightning Bolt, Path, or Path, Lightning Bolt. Those are about, but I have it just short of Swords. Yes.
Yeah, but what I meant was that group of 4 are kind of the.
Yeah, I think Swords is head and shoulders above the rest, but Agreed. I think Dismember is like barely behind. Snuff Out's also in that list, by the way. Snuff Out is the Black Swords to Plowshares. Snuff
Out is incredible. Like that was a card I used to ignore, and I will not be ignoring if it's still in the cube. Next is, so here's a card that does have a very high ceiling and an extremely low floor. It's Exhume.
Yeah, so this is one I don't like picking early because this is good in exactly dedicated Reanimator and bad otherwise. There's a drastic difference between Exhume and then Reanimator, Animate Dead, or Necromancy. The latter 3, I'll play in basically any black deck because they are good spells.
Yes.
Exhume, you have to be doing the thing. And in the middle of the game, it still even can kind of be a liability.
Right. Where are you at on Finale of Devastation? I've never been that impressed by it.
It's basically a blank like that. Finale is one of those cards that I think barely stays in the cube, where it's like 1 out of every like 5 green decks you'll want one. There are like, look, the cube needs, I don't know, needs might be strong. The cube is fine to have some amount of these cards like Finale of Devastation, where a specific deck wants them some of the time because there is a use for them. I'd much rather have a card like Finale of Devastation in the cube than a card like I don't know, Gideon Jura, right? Is a card that I think you never really want. It really doesn't have a high ceiling. Finale has a very low floor. Most decks don't play it, but it has a pretty high ceiling. Like Finale is really good.
If you can make a ton of mana, it is a sick payoff. Karmic Guide?
This is actually pretty similar to Finale, where I normally don't put Karmic Guide in my deck, but every now and then there are decks where Karmic Guide can be quite strong.
You did some filthy stuff with the Karmic Guide on, I think, your last video.
Yeah, this was the invitational where this is actually the high stakes challenge where, if we lose, we're out, and that team is now the invitational champions. We do it once a month, and so far me, Eli Cassis, and Luis Salvato have been back-to-back champs. And I got to go.
Interesting. So the 3 people who have won at least 1 PT each somehow put it together. All right.
And we get to battle against and in that battle I got to use Karmic Guide plus Recurring Nightmare to really good effect.
Yes.
And that was pretty sick.
Next is Nissa Animated. What is her name?
Ascended Animist.
Ascended Animist, right. And I don't actually remember. This one, blows up artifacts or makes green things equal to her loyalty or something?
So she's 7 mana, 2 green, 3 colorless, and then 2 green Phyrexian. Mm-hmm. And for every green Phyrexian you pay, for each one you pay with life instead of mana, she comes into play with 2 less loyalty.
Okay.
And she starts with 7 loyalty normally. So you can play her for 5 mana at just 3 loyalty. Mm-hmm. And what she does is her +1 puts an XX into play where X is the number of loyalty counters on her. So like if you played her for 5 mana, you could +1 make a 4/4, and her -1 is blow up an artifact or enchantment, and her -7 is your creatures get +1/+1 and trample for each forest you have. I think that that Nissa is a good green card, a pretty replaceable 5-drop. It's not one I would be looking to take early.
Next one is one that I think I found the most interesting watching you draft, because these are cards that maybe I overvalue. Preordain.
Preordain, I don't think you overvalue. It's hard to, because Preordain is absurdly good. Honestly, I think that you can make an argument for Preordain over Teferi, pick one, pack one. It is really, really good, and you basically prevent yourself from being kind of mana screwed or short on action at the very low cost of just 1 mana. Like it's really, really strong at making your deck more consistent, which is especially good when you're in a cube draft where all your cards are so powerful.
Exactly.
Just drawing the right ratio is good. It helps assemble combos, and it's single blue as opposed to blue-white. The Dismember is still in the conversation. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Dismember was still just like the card you're supposed to take here.
Yeah, as you've said, and we'll talk about it more, the cube really does feel very creature-centric, and having a Dismember as a colorless opener is really strong. Next is one of your favorites, Lurrus of the Dream Den.
Oh, look, I love Lurrus. I'm not out here first picking Lurrus because I think that you need a kind of reason to go that direction. But Lurrus is one of my favorite cards to build around. The specific times when I want Lurrus are, A, if you have Black Lotus, which it seems silly to be like, haha, you have Black Lotus, who cares? Well, your job is still to maximize the cards you've drafted.
Definitely. And
Black Lotus Lurrus is disgusting. Or what the times I've had the most success with Lurrus is when, like, my first couple picks are cheap cards, including removal, and I see like a 5th pick Lurrus when I have, let's say, a Tidehollow Sculler, a Swords to Plowshares, and a Dothi Voidwalker, right? Like that's like a dream setup for Lurrus. And then you can actually go hard, because companioning Lurrus, as it turns out, is still pretty broken. Like you will win a lot by doing that.
Yeah. Oh boy. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this one. Hull Breacher.
Ooh, this is my pick right now. So, okay. Well, I guess given that there's Hull Breacher, we are actually not drafting a Magic Online cube because that one's not currently in.
Okay.
Which I think it should be actually, because I think it adds some cool dimensions. But anyways, Hull Breacher is, just not only a hoser for their card draw. It, alongside Shieldred and Orcish Bowmasters, Narset, and Leovold, is part of one of my favorite decks, which is the Draw 7 deck, where you're just trying to assemble Draw 7s and Hull Breacher, and just like if you cast a Wheel of Fortune with a Hull Breacher in play, your opponent draws 0 cards, you draw 7, and you get 7 treasures. Yeah, obviously you're going to win that game.
Yeah, you can usually find something to spend those treasures on.
Yes, you are able to do so, and I think that Hull Breacher is a very justifiable first pick here. Okay,
and you want to see it in the Magic Online official cube?
Yeah, I don't see a good reason not to include it. Like it's a really strong card. Look, strength, power level is not, I think, a reason to keep a card out. Is this card better than Black Lotus or Ancestral Recall? No. Is it better than Swords to Plowshares? I don't think so. I think if you want to win, pick one, pack one, you should take Swords over Hull Breacher. Is it too unfun? Well, I mean, you can argue about that. I don't know that Hull Breacher is drastically less fun than other really, really strong cards. Like, is it less fun than Mind Twist? Is it less fun than Balance or, cards like that? Ragavan? I guess I wouldn't say that it's so far out of bounds that you should do that. So why are we not including this card? I think it's because of the Vintage Supreme draft that used to be on, and Hull Breacher was just way too busted there.
And left a bad taste.
Kind of as a holdover from that, it just was cut.
Okay. Well, but this is this is where you want to start currently.
Yeah, because it's really good against some decks. Like you just play a Hull Breacher against some decks, and you end up defeating them because a lot of their cards turn off. Mm-hmm. And B, it's a good card to combo with. So it's cards that are good on their own and have strong combos. Yeah, I'm I'm pretty into those kind of cards.
Next is another card that I think, anybody who's watched you draft recognizes that you value these highly, and anybody watching probably
it's a fetch land.
And it's a fetch land. This one is Marsh Flats.
Yeah, Marsh Flats actually one of the better ones, I think. I basically, I mean, all the fetch lands are really close. I don't really draw a huge distinction, but I think Marsh Flats is naturally one of the better ones because black-white has a pretty hefty mana requirements in general. A lot of your good cards are either double colors, and black-white is an aggressive combination where having untapped lands on demand is a little more important. But I wouldn't take Marsh Flats over Hull Breacher. I think fetch land is, again, kind of the like good common territory. I would take fetch land over Teferi, though. That is actually a pick I would make.
Yeah, and this is primarily because of the tri-lands that like they've become so critical.
Yeah, the tri-lands are definitely part of it. Also, like there's a decent amount of synergies with fetch lands, and just fetch lands are just really good. Like you get to cast your spells. Like at the end of a cube draft, if you don't take lands, you're going to have 34 playables. You're just going to cut 11 of them.
Yeah.
Well, if you took 7 lands, then you're not having to cut that many cards, and you're basically wasting fewer picks.
Next up is another card that has been a huge mover in my mind for you, and it's made me look at it. It's a card I never even really considered. It's Dark Confidant.
Yeah, this one I always try to wheel. I rarely take on the first go around, but
it makes it in your deck a decent chunk of the time.
Well, as curves get lower and as you're drafting like aggressive mid-range decks, then yeah, the cards like Dark Confidant get a lot more appealing.
Yeah. This is a new edition that is in the Vintage Cube now, replacing, I think, Sword of Fire and Ice. It's Enduril, Flame of the West. This
one's good. I like it more than all the swords because it has effect on attack instead of on hit, which I think is really important. Mm-hmm. I would say that Anduril is a good pick if you are already in a kind of aggressive color, but not a card I would take. I would slam this early, or at least I'd try not to.
Indatha Triome.
Triomes are good, way worse than fetches. You would always basically pick a fetch of any kind over a Triome.
And the last card is Spell Pierce.
Yeah, Spell Pierce is good too. We're at this point, I think, firmly on the Hull Breacher camp for me.
Yeah.
I think that it's just a stronger card, especially pick one, pack one when you can build around it than a lot of the other cards. So
yeah,
that's what I'd be doing.
Yeah, my eyes go to Teferi, Dismember, Preordain, Hull Breacher, Marsh Flats. Those are the cards that are like, I'm kind of going to group those first and then go from there. And I've never played a Hull Breacher before, but based on watching you, I would take the Hull Breacher because that is super fun. I love those. The last Cube season, I drafted draw 7 decks all day. I was just like, Narset, give me the, splash around for Leovold and just try to abuse those things. And a Hull Breacher's, like you said, it's probably the best of the bunch. So yeah, sweet. And also I just noticed that Kenji's video is titled Hull Breacher is Broken. So I guess he takes it too, although I didn't quite go far enough to say. Okay, so let's talk about, just for a little bit, let's talk about kind of the state of Cube in general, how you're approaching it now versus how it was before, that kind of thing.
So, this will kind of echo some of the stuff I've said over the past, year of Cube, but as I've gotten a ton more practice and really kind of absorbed all the changes here, there's a couple of kind of top line things. First of all, Cube is very fast right now. It doesn't mean every game ends instantly. It doesn't mean you're always playing against aggro or super fast combo. It just means you have to be doing things early and often in order to have your best chance of winning the game. Like you can't be spending too much time messing around. Mm-hmm. Like you do want to kind of get on the board and make assertive plays. I think that one of the biggest changes is that blue has actually lost market share with all the other colors except green, basically, because blue has gone from overall like the best color. All the busted cards are blue. Even cards like Jace the Mind Sculptor and Mana Drain are just head and shoulders above everything else. Well, in the last couple of years, almost all the good new cards that have been printed have been not blue. So you at this point are in a spot where I think that all the other colors are gaining a lot of ground and blue is not. So yeah, blue has ended up, kind of suffering a little bit as a result. That doesn't mean that, blue's not good. Obviously, a lot of the best cards that I named are still the best cards, but blue has definitely gone down in estimation, whereas black went from being the worst color to, I think, basically the same tier as one of the top colors. There's blue, black, and red and white have all gained a ton at this point, and I honestly think that I don't even know what the best color is. Like, I don't think it's blue.
Do you think it's
I don't
white?
know. It could be white. White is very powerful and deep. Look, first of all, the white weenie deck's very good. And if I had one piece of advice to people playing in, kind of like the cube league on Magic Online, where you just join and play, if all you care about is trophies and tickets and maximizing your win percentage, heavily biasing towards mono white is not a bad place to be. No. Like Cedric does that every time and wins a lot.
It's always been the sneaky highest win percentage deck. It basically takes advantage of the fact that a lot of people who enjoy cube don't enjoy playing that type of deck, and will just leave those cards to whoever wants them. Yeah. And they're good. I mean, they're really good. Like the days when I first started cubing, like people put Savannah Lions in their cube, and it would be like, okay, you're all in on this like low curve, get underneath the blue decks and do that thing. But like in fact, we will be going over every single white card in the cube, and you're going to see there's no misses. Like these cards are all like stand on their own, very powerful cards that they screw up the other decks bad. They really do. Like there is now critical mass across the curve for white decks to have good synergy, good curve, great mana if you're mono white, and very powerful options at each of those. You're just not giving anything up anymore.
Yeah. And as a result, white also just got a bunch of really busted new cards, like over the last, year or 2 years. Like Palace Jailer is actually more than a couple years old now, but and so is Parallax Wave, which is like one of the biggest rising stars. But Fourth Eorlingus, which is a red-white card, is absolutely disgusting. That's red-white X sorcery, make X/2/2 haste tramplers, and if one of your creatures damages the opponent this turn, you become the monarch. So like
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's just absurd how good that is. And you basically have the capability of being a great aggro color, but also a great control color. Solitude is one of the best recent cards. And, the Ephemerate, like all these cards play really well together and are just inherently powerful. So white definitely is very good. Really, the main thing for me is that the kind of like the new 3 and 4 mana plays are now as powerful as 5 and 6 mana plays used to be. It's like 3 and 4 are the new 5 and 6.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is that you can now, for 3 mana, cast a Lelia the Blade Reforged, or you can cast a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. You can, for 4 mana, you can cast Palace Jailer or Minsk and Boo. These cards just beat cards like Primeval Titan, like pretty handily. So that has a lot of like kind of knock-on effects. That has a lot of kind of implications as to where the cube balance ends up being. And it means that ramping to 6 is not a strategy you can't do, but not a strategy that I think is that good anymore. Like I don't think you're really supposed to spend a lot of time and effort trying to do that, because you really just don't need to do that. Like you could just Moxes are still broken, but you don't need to try to ramp up to Consecrated Sphinx. Talk about a card that has not aged well, right? Right,
totally.
And instead, like cards like Birds of Paradise and Noble Hierarch are still super, super good, because turn 1 birds, turn 2 3-drop, like turn 2 Oko, turn 2 Fable. Like these are the kinds of things that really go a long way. Like, even Elite Spellbinder, right? 3 mana, 3/1, it taxes one of their cards in hand by 2. Like these kinds of cards have a really big effect on the game, because both players are really kind of jockeying for position in the first couple turns.
Yeah, I've seen you prioritize the faster mana, and it's funny because your initial instinct might think like, well, yeah, because you want to get up to your 4, 5, 6 mana cards, but it's often just to like have a powerful, like if you can go Mana Accelerator, play a 3-drop on turn 2, play a 4-drop on turn 3, like those are your finishers, right? Like those are the type of cards that can win the game for you on their own now, Where before it felt like those are the type of kind of bridge cards that would be powerful and relevant and matter. Think Jace the Mind Sculptor or something like that, but they wouldn't end the game on the spot. But like when you play Minsc and Boo on turn 3, when you play Palace Jailer on turn 3, it's a problem. Like your opponent is in an absolute world of hurt at that point, and they may not be able to come back from that. It feels similarly to when you would cast a 5 or 6 mana spell before, where you slam a big 5 or you play a Titan and you're like, okay, you're in trouble. Like you need an answer for this. It's going to leave behind some value. Like this was a big play. Now it feels like 4 mana can do that for you.
Yeah. And that, again, it changes like, okay, how much are counterspells worth? Well, counterspells are still good, but they're a little worse than they used to be. At least the ones that you have to spend mana on. I still love Force of Will. I love Force of Negation. Subtlety is very good. But like a card like Mana Leak, look, it's excellent still. I'm still going to put the card in my deck. I take it highly, but I think it's kind of lost a step compared to where it used to be because it's a lot better against a 5 and 6 mana card than it is against a 3 mana card. Totally. You just aren't in a position to do that all the time. Yeah. And I think as a result, the valuation on a lot of other cards have changed as well. One of the things that also ends up happening in this cube is that I think that some of the combo stuff is a little bit less good. Now, I do want to take like a little side, a little sidestep here, because one of the things that you brought up earlier when we were talking, and that is definitely relevant, is a lot of what I'm doing is drafting 6-player 3v3s or even 8-player 3v3s, and in those situations, combos especially bad because people on the other team are hating your, they won't let you wield Deceiver Exarch for your twin deck,
right.
Or you're playing a 6-player cube, and so less cards are open. But even setting that aside, I think that a lot of what you want to do is cards that work on their own, because there are some combos like Twin is a good example of like, yeah, when you assemble this combo, you win, right? Mm-hmm. That's all there is to it. If they don't have creature removal. There's a lot of combos where like, you assemble the combo pieces, and is it really that much better than just casting Birds of Paradise into Fable the Mirror Breaker? And often the answer is no. And so look, I enjoy messing around with Storm. I like Dream Halls, all that stuff. I think if you want to play those cards and have fun, I think it is great. I do find those fun. I do that all the time. Are those the best things to be doing? I don't think they are usually. Like there's an exception because Underworld Breach, Brain Freeze, Lion's Eye is such a lean combo that also costs 2 mana to start and wins the game. So sure, that's a great combo. Mm-hmm. Should you be trying to Yawgmoth's will people out? Most of the time the answer is no, and you see that in the drafts. I mean, how many times this season when you start cubing Marshall are you going to see packs with 4 cards and one of them's Yawgmoth's will?
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Yeah.
I just don't.
So,
yeah, it's not a same thing with like Tendrils and stuff like that. Like those cards just go later.
So I think that the best way to kind of approach this cube now is you want to interact early. Mm-hmm. You want to have mostly cheap cards, and you want to kind of end up in a spot where your deck, their cards, they don't have to all stand on their own, but a lot of them want to. The way I kind of see it is I like cards that are good on their own and great when they're, combined with other cards.
Yeah.
I like kind of staying away, as fun as it is, and sometimes it does work, the lands deck, for example. But like a card like Fastbond is exactly the kind of card I think is kind of a trap, where Fastbond by itself is just not a card. It doesn't do anything.
Right.
Like your average opening hand with Fastbond, you'd be better off replacing it with just a forest most of the time. Because sure, sometimes you play turn 1 Fastbond, play 3 lands, play a 3-drop, but that means your opening hand was 4 lands, Fastbond, and a 3-drop.
Right.
Like most opening hands, Fastbond is closer to a mulligan than a card.
Right.
However, if you combine it with Courser of Krufix or Wheel of Fortune, yeah, of course you're talking, right? Crucible of Worlds, those things can really go off. I just think that most of the time, like Dothy Voidwalker is a great card when you Thoughtseize are a good card, but it's also a great card when you cast it for 2 mana.
Yes.
So I like Dothy Voidwalker a lot. I like Thoughtseize a lot.
Bowmasters has been, with a bullet for you, and that fills that same role. Yeah.
Yeah. Orcish Bowmaster is a fantastic card to put in your deck, cast, and have it perform. No combos needed.
Yep.
It also does combo really well with Wheel of Fortune. So, that's a great aspect. But, I think that trying to focus on cards that end up working working on their own, even if you are also playing cards that make them better, I think is definitely worth it.
It's funny because the decks that I see you draft and I see show up in those team drafts remind me of the type of decks that I draft at the end of a cube season. Because I'll usually come in and, I'll have some idea of what I like to do. Maybe it's like a blue-green deck or, drafting Splinter Twin or something like that. And I'll draft whatever, whatever I think is good. And I'll just have a good time, trying out powerful stuff and trying to do stuff. And then by the end of the season, it's like, I feel like everybody that's left, that's still playing, already knows all the combos. You never wheel the Splinter Twins anymore. Nothing ever comes back. And so it's really hard because everybody knows all the good cards and they know to, not let you have that stuff. And so what I end up drafting usually are land disruption and hand disruption. Like I'm like the Kolagon's command, strip mine, in any ways I can recur it. Is your new guy in the queue, by the way? This reminds me, because I was going to say him to Turok, but is Turok himself?
Turok himself. I've got the cube list open because I want to be able to reference it.
Because that card's been freaking sweet for you.
Oh, no. I do like Turok a lot, and that's one of the rewards for being in the heavy black deck. But no Turok, sadly.
Okay, we should put that on the radar too. But anyway, like that would be the perfect card. That I end up playing all of the stupid 2-mana hand disruption guys. The brain maggots and the mesmeric fiends and stuff. Like I just jam those like basically fun police style decks for the last part of every cube season because I can always get them. Nobody wants that stuff. Like nobody prioritizes mesmeric fiend, right? Nobody's like, oh, you got to get your hands on a mesmeric fiend. And I'm like, I'll take it, and obviously I don't have to take that card super early, but I can pick those up when I want pretty much any time and sort of scrap together like enough disruption to get over the line. And, that seems to me to be, at least thematically, some of the way that these decks have been moving, which is interesting to me because I think before I would have described the decks as basically reaching for the ceiling. Like everybody was kind of trying to do the most powerful, biggest thing that they could, whether it's a ramp deck, putting out a Crater Hoof, or whether it's a storm deck doing the storm stuff. Or Splinter Twin, or, any number of combo, artifact deck doing the thing where it makes a whole crap ton of mana and then recurs, Mindslaver, stuff like that. You don't see that quite as often. And people still go for it. It's not like that stuff's dead, but the stuff that seems to be working better is the stuff that you're drafting. It's the closer to the vest stuff, the stuff that kind of is good against everything. It's almost like a mid-range strategy in a constructed format, where it's kind of like it knows what it's doing. Every card it plays matters. Yes, it doesn't have like free wins that often, but turns out, wins don't have to be free to be wins. So
yeah. So I mean, think about it this way. 4 years ago, if we did a cube draft and you come over and you're like, all right, I was like, Marshall, what'd you draft? You're like, I drafted white black midrange. I'd be like, ugh, why? What went wrong?
Yes. In fact, you would have scolded me. You would have said, like, dude, don't tell me you put Bitter Blossom in your deck. Don't.
Well, I still think Bitter Blossom sucks.
Which isn't in the cube, I hope. But
I don't think it is anymore.
It is.
Funny. I think Bitter Blossom is bad. But
Bitter Blossom still sucks, but yeah.
But aside the point, I mean, how many times have you seen me take fetch land into Thoughtseize and then see like I take Marsh Flats, then I take Thoughtseize, then I see a Tide Hollow Sculler.
Tide Hollow Sculler is the card you get the most excited about now. I'm like, who is it? I mean,
Tide Hollow Sculler.
There was, I can't remember when it was, but at some point I sent you a message where I was like, dude, calm down. Like, because I think you said, what was it? The stupid artifact 3-drop, the prototype.
Wait, which one? Oh,
the white one.
Is a great card.
I was like, Luis, look, man. I'm like, I'm here for the new era of Tide Hollow Sculler, and but come on, you said it was a great card. Like, calm down, and you're like, okay. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, it is true.
But Sculler is like that. That to me is the perfect poster child for how things have changed. Is that you look to get that card into your deck. Like you're like, oh, I got a Sculler. Or if you take a better card over it, you're like, God, I really hope I wield a Sculler. Like I want this card back, where that card never even would have been a card you even considered Like the only time you ever would have mentioned Sculler before was when somebody Scullered you and you thought, really, I'm going to lose to a Sculler, or like, this is annoying. I have to mess with a stupid Sculler. But now you're like, give me that thing, So, and that again is a perfect example. Another card. We've always loved this card. But Tide Hollow, Strix, Sculler, what am I thinking of?
Baleful Strix.
Baleful Strix, right? Is another one that is like the perfect example of the type of card that you want now, right? It's cheap, good in all situations, replaces itself, and there are some combos around it, right? Like you can blank it to get extra cards, or you can return it with the ninja, to get an easy hit in with that kind of stuff, right? Again, in this stuff, Baleful Strix is always a card that we really loved, but like, that is another poster child for the type of strategy that Luis has been deploying.
Yeah. And I think that at the end of the day, like cubing is about fun. You should do what is fun for you. But if you really want to like kind of like maximize your wins and you really want to kind of get better at this, I do think that effectively like the kind of the poster child for all this is the cards I keep mentioning, like Fable, Thoughtseize, Grief, like these are the kinds of cards you want in your deck.
That's right. Okay, let's do our first run through here, and we're going to start with white. We're going to go over every card in white, but this is aimed at people who cube. Okay, so we're not going to be reading the text on every card and explaining the very basics of what it does. We're going to assume that you know the card for the purposes of this, because if we did it that way, it would be a much deeper dive, and I think it would actually lose its utility for the people. Because if you've never cubed before and you don't know any of these old cards, you've got some homework to do, and it would be too clunky for us to be the ones to teach you what each of these cards do. And you'll be able to figure it out based on what we say as well. So again, the things we want to hit are, how good is this card? I like the tier system that you use, something like that. Luis just saying like, look, this is a tier whatever card for its archetype, because we don't need to do the thing where we put it in a vacuum. These cards are never in a vacuum, and we know exactly what the landscape looks like. So we can just skip that. And then, so how good is it? Where does it belong? And then what are some things to consider if you have it in your deck or if you pick it that maybe aren't obvious? Okay. So the first card up is Esper Sentinel. That card's been really annoying. Every time a white, red, or mono white player plays it on turn one, I'm like, crap.
Yeah, Esper Sentinel is actually one of the cards that doesn't just fit in mono white aggro. Like White Winnie will always play this card. It's perfect for the strategy. I also don't mind Esper Sentinel in your just kind of average mid-range white deck.
Okay.
Like even like something like White Blue Control. That's like probably about the low end of it. But what I would want to see when you're playing it is a way to make use of it, whether it's like a Skull Clamp or a Umezawa's Jite, or like equipment mainly, or sometimes like I played it in like White Blue Tinker because you can sack it.
It's an artifact, yeah. The
body itself and the ability kind of combine pretty nicely.
Okay. One cool thing that I've seen you do with your new favorite, the Orcish Bowmasters, is is let them have the card and then start pinging stuff.
Yeah, you can do that with Esper Sentinel. You can kind of let them
because if you don't pay, they just draw the card. Like it's not a May, right?
The best one's actually Hull Breacher, because that even prevents the draw. So if they have an Esper Sentinel and you have a Hull Breacher, you just never pay and you just get a treasure for the first spell you cast every turn. It's actually awesome. Straight downside. Whereas the Bowmasters, at least they're still getting the card. Yeah, but it is really funny.
And even though those combos are more with those other cards, you should be aware of it when you play Esper Sentinel. Next is a 2-pack here. This is Giver of Runes and the original Mother of Runes.
So Mother is by far the best of these two. It's not close because it can protect itself. So what happens is if you play turn one Mother of Runes and they don't immediately kill it, you're going to 2-for-1 them at some point. That's just basically fact. That said, they're both very good. These are, again, a little more aimed towards an aggressive strategy. The exception is Mother of Runes, because she can protect herself, I'll just play her in almost every white deck because at the very least, you can just block their creature and protect it.
Yep. Or start getting your guy through. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Giver of Runes is premium in any sort of white aggro deck that has a lot of creatures, because it needs to protect other creatures.
Yeah, these are both top tier cards in those decks, right?
Yes. Mother of Runes is like top tier, and Giver of Runes is like a tier behind it.
Right. Because the thing is that one drops are so critical for those archetypes. Like you have to do something on turn one, and these are two of the better things. Next is Student of Warfare, which is an interesting one in the sense that it doesn't really do much, right? It is just exactly what it says on the card. It's a playable one drop that you can dump your extra mana into and becomes a problem as it scales with the game. That's kind of it. Yeah.
This is straight up. Play this in mono white aggro. Don't play it otherwise. And this is the kind of card you'd hope to wheel in mono white and not spend early picks on.
Thraben Inspector, huge fan.
Oh, the goat.
The goat, right? Thraby baby. Yeah, this thing's fantastic. Now, this does see extensive play in mono white, but you can play it outside of it as well.
I will play this in any deck that has a decent amount of white mana. It's just too good to pass up.
What are the combos like? Do you blink it? Is that like you're ephemerating your Thraben Inspector, your Resto
Soul Ring or whatever? Yeah. Like the beauty of Thraben Inspector is it justifies itself. You should always play it. 1 mana, 1/2 draw card, which you have to spend 2 to draw, but you can do it kind of whenever you want, is just a good card. And then it combos with everything. It gives you a Tinker target, the card to sack to Tinker.
Yep.
It combos with every blink under the sun. It wears equipment well. It crews Smuggler's Copter. You can sacrifice it to Yawgmoth. Like it just does everything. So
it does everything.
Thraben Inspector is, again, one of those cards I don't want to take early, but when I get a 6 pick for Thraben Inspector, I feel good about that.
For sure. And like you said, it'll go into effectively any deck that can cast it. Next is Usher the Fallen, which is a white weenie only card, and it's not that in demand.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. It's a card that you'll play, but you're not like I said, you're like stoked about it. You're just going to put it in your deck.
Now this one's kind of interesting. So Weathered Wayfarer is apparently still in the cube.
I haven't had a chance to try this one. My inclination is that it's a little weak, but there are some tricks you can do. So this is the 1 mana 1/1. You pay a white and tap and get a land out of your deck. Any land, not just basic, as long as your opponent has more lands than you.
Yeah.
Turn 1 Weathered Wayfarer, right? They play land. You play a fetch land, say go. When they play their second land, you can crack the fetch and then in response Wayfarer and then get your land. And you can go get a strip mine. You can go get a Library of Alexandria. Like the place I'd want to play Weathered Wayfarer is when I have special lands to get. It's not good at just getting random lands.
Yeah. I think that this card suffers from not having a natural home. The white weenie deck doesn't want it. And the deck that you described is primarily green, right? And so this is kind of an awkward fit. You know, you'd have to be like a green-white cares about lands deck, but the other white cards generally don't. So this is one that I would have on the chopping block potentially just because it doesn't have a natural fit. Okay, that moves us to the 2 drops. And by the way, I'm sure you've noticed, but we're doing creatures first and we're doing them in casting cost order. So here's the 2s. And actually, I want to... never mind. All right. First one is Adonto Vanguard.
A good card in white weenie, not that interesting out. And when I say white weenie, we mean white-black aggro, mono-white aggro, white-green aggro, any white aggressive deck. It doesn't have to be mono-white.
The best version is mono-white, but you can definitely combo. Adonto Vanguard's just a slammer. The thing about it is that you might think it's good on defense, but it's actually not. The 4 life is just too much to pay if you're trying to block.
Yeah, I think that Adonto Vanguard is, if you're attacking and have planes in your deck, you want it. Otherwise, you basically don't.
Cathar Commando. This one's been good. This one hits that kind of middle ground that you like quite a bit. It hits hard as a 3/1 with flash for 2 mana, but also hitting artifacts and enchantments in the Vintage Cube is like, it's very rare to find a game where you don't have a good target for it. Artifacts and enchantments are just everywhere.
Yeah, I think Cathar Commando is great, and I'm happy to put it in any white deck because disenchant effects are just main deckable in Vintage Q. Every deck has something. So just putting Cathar Commando in your blue-white control deck is totally fine. Look, it's a 3/1 flash. You can block, you can block their 2-drop when they attack with it. You can blow up whatever big artifact they have, kill their enchantment, end of turn play it and attack a planeswalker out of nowhere. Like, it's just a good card.
This next one's interesting because it was put in the cube as a sideboard card, basically. It's Containment Priest, which is meant to hose primarily cheaty decks, right? Decks that are trying to put creatures into play without actually casting them, like Reanimator or Sneak Attack style decks. But I've seen you do some disgusting stuff with this that has nothing to do with sideboard applications.
Yeah, so the thing that you want to do with Containment Priest is combine it with Parallax Wave, where you Parallax Wave all their creatures, and then in response to it going away, you play the Containment Priest, or you just have it in play, and then they all try to come back and can't. They just all get exiled.
Yeah.
You can also combine it with Flicker Wisp. That's one of the blink effects that lets you blink their stuff.
Yeah. So is
not
it worth
a good combo with Resto Angel?
Yes. It does hit you too. Is it worth it is the question, because you are just getting a 2/2 with Flash for 2, which is way below the bar as the floor goes. You do need to like take advantage of this either by hosing your opponent's strategy or by forcing that with the cards that you mentioned.
I typically do not main deck Containment Priest unless A, I'm in mono white and just need it for my curve, or B, if it's a team draft, then like one of them's Reanimator. Like if I had both Flicker Wisp and Parallax Wave, I would main deck it. Otherwise, it's more of a sideboard card, though a good one you would like to pick up.
High impact, yeah. Intrepid Adversary is next. This card's been good for the White Weenie deck, man. It hits and it's just like, wow. You get a little late in the game and things get pretty ugly.
So it's not only good for the White Weenie deck, it's actually pretty decent even in any sort of mid-range or even slightly control strategy because it's got lifelink. Mm-hmm. So you get to end up in a spot where against aggro, the 3/1 lifelink for 2 is great, and then late game sometimes it's bigger and pumps your team. And against control, well, you play this on turn 2, you can actually threaten them. So I tend to play this more often than not. Like your typical blue-white deck, I think, will want to play this card. Because I think the blue-white decks in this format are not usually a 0-creature deck either.
Yeah, this card's also cool in 2 other ways because of the way that it works, where it ETBs and then it offers you the chance to pay the kicker, if you will, but you don't have to pay it up front. So that kind of clowns cards like Mana Leak, where your opponent has to be like, okay, I guess I'll just use a Mana Leak so that you can't pay one of these payments. But like that often isn't a great use of their Mana Leak effect. And then also you can blink it, right? Like you can just play it on 2, let it hit a couple times, and then, Flicker Wisp it or Ephemerate it, and then pay later or even at instant speed to augment the power toughness of your team.
Yeah, it has cool combos like that.
So that's pretty cool too. Leonin Relic Warder, main deck or sideboard?
I would main deck this if you have the mana base for it. Yeah. Just killing an artifact or enchantment is good.
What about Lion Sash?
This one I don't like to main deck.
But you will bring it in for disrupting
it's a good sideboard
strategies.
Card against graveyard stuff. The circumstance where I'm main decking it is if I'm playing Stoneforge Mystic and have one good equipment, and then a Lion Sash at that point is worth it. So if you draw, you don't want to be in a position where you drew Batterskull and your Stoneforge doesn't get anything. Getting a Lion Sash is still pretty good.
This is pretty funny. So what I was looking for before when I couldn't find it was I was going to put Porcelain Legionnaire in the 2-drop slot, but they already did. It's just literally in the 2-drop slot. So Porcelain Legionnaire. And, again, you're starting to see how we're approaching these things, right? There's cards that have varied applications, but when you look at cards like Student of Warfare, at Adanto Vanguard and Porcelain Legionnaire, these are power and toughness for cheap, right? And that is something that the mono white deck is interested in, but they don't have a lot of things going on beyond that.
Yeah.
Where are you at on the Legionnaire? Is it enough power and toughness for you for cheap enough?
I would always play this in aggro of any color. So like black aggro, red aggro, white aggro. It's a colorless card. Mm-hmm. And it has a slight additional, applications in artifact-based decks that really need something to tinker away, though this is not like the best thing to tinker away. Mm-hmm. It's good with equipment because it has first strike. It's a solid card. Yeah. I would typically avoid this in your random mid-range deck and definitely not play it in control.
Selfless Spirit?
This is on the low end of cards. I like it in my white aggro decks, but even then I don't prioritize it, and it's one of the first on the chopping block. Where it's good is out of the sideboard against someone who has Wrath of God or Dam, things like that. And there is also a nice little combo with Luris where if you go Luris, turn 2 Selfless Spirit, turn 3 Luris, or just later Luris, it protects Luris and Luris recasts it, so it's kind of like a little shields up moment.
So they need 2 removal spells, and one has to be an instant, and it's just really annoying. Yeah. Here's a tier 1 card for tier 0 maybe for this deck for mono white is Stoneforge Mystic.
I wouldn't call this tier 0 for the deck because
how high do you go?
I would say this is like a good early speculative card. It's like a tier 1.5 card. Because look, when you combine it with Batterskull or the Cauldra completed, it's effective. But even then, if you cast that and you get Cauldra and then they kill Stoneforge, you didn't really 2-for-1 them because now you have a 7-drop in your hand that you're not all that likely to be casting anytime soon. And I think that I think that you should take Stoneforge relatively early, but it's not a Windmill Slam. It's like worse than Mother of Runes. It's worse than Swords or Path, Solitude, Palace Jail. It's worse than all the tier like 1 white cards.
Okay, interesting.
But it's better than like early in the draft. It's better than something like Intrepid Adversary or Cathar Commando, that sort of thing.
Okay, I have it a little higher, but I'll revisit that because you know more than I do about this. Okay, how about this one? Thalia, Guardian of Thraben.
Thalia is awesome. This is one of the reasons to be mono white. Thalia punishes the kind of the slower decks or any deck that's reliant on spells. Like one of the things that you least want to see is Sandy Dog playing turn 1 Giver of Runes, turn 2 Thalia, because your whole game plan is just kind of falling apart at that point. I actually play Thalia in almost every white deck unless I have a ton of spells. But like if I'm like white-green mid-range, not even like super aggressive, but I only have like 6 spells, I'll play Thalia because it's just going to mess your opponent up so much at such low cost.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is the card that has the highest impact at the 2-mana slot for this deck. This is in the correct matchup, which is many of them, and some of them it's just crippling. And like you said, this is a reason to be in this archetype. Tithe Taker is in this cube.
So this is decent. This is a card I like with any sort of like combo, which is something like Skull Clamp, for example, or equipment. I also like it in decks that are trying to be defensive. Like it's good in aggro. Like it's a solid Porcelain Legionnaire type card in your white aggro decks. Messes up control decks. It's resilient to removal, right? Because it leaves a 1/1 behind, all that sort of thing. But I actually do like it as a defensive play. Like when you go turn 2 Tithe Taker, turn 3 Planeswalker, your opponent's going to have a hard time attacking your Planeswalker, which is nice.
Yeah, I think the only thing I don't like about it is that it is somewhat ignorable. Like it is only a 2/1. It does have that grindy aspect to it, so it's probably worth it. But there's a lot of times where like if your opponent goes tap, and you're like, don't be Thalia, and they go Tithe Taker, and you're like, fine, like have your stupid Tithe Taker. It's a little bit annoying.
If you want to play at sorcery speed and don't care about killing it, then yes, it's a 2-mana 2/1 with no other text.
Right. And I feel like one of them is oppressive and the other one is annoying, and that there's a big gap there. Last 2-drop is Wall of Omens. I feel like it just never quite, like I know it does the thing, but I'm just like, isn't there something better I should be doing? Even if I'm blinking, even if I'm doing that kind of stuff?
Yeah, there basically always is. Wall of Omens, I think, is like on the very low end of playable at this point. Like I like it in some decks, but the thing is the blink deck is usually assertive and just doesn't really want Wall of Omens.
Exactly.
Like your blink deck wants Blade Splicer and Venser and cards like that, Elite Spellbinder to go with their Soul Herder and Ephemerate. You don't really want to be blinking Wall of Omens. I do like it in control decks, but this is kind of like Anticipate and Limited. It's always like not quite there.
That's perfect. Perfect analogy. All right, our 3-drops. Man, the first one out is a card I have a lot of respect for, and I fear it's Adeline Resplendent Cathar. Dude, this thing kills me a lot. Like I die to this card often. The 4 toughness is really, really rough on Adeline as well. Yeah,
I mean this card is just like it's like a 3-mana 6/4 that puts 2 creatures into play. A lot of the time is what it feels like. And has vigilance. Like it's just a really strong card. And here again, you need to be heavy white and have a lot of creatures. But I play this in any deck that can really that meets those conditions, which is both mid range and aggressive.
Okay, I want to do something, by the way, because I just think it'd be fun. So let's pick a goat from the 1-drops, 2-drops, 3-drops from each thing. So Mother of Runes, goat 1-drop.
Mother of Runes,
and then goat 2-drop is Thalia.
Yep, for sure.
Okay. So Adeline's our first one, and that is a banger. That card is really, really tough. Next is Blade Splicer.
Blade Splicer is great. It's a step
awesome card.
A step worse than Adeline, but still very, very good.
Yeah, and better with synergies, right? It's much more blinkable.
It's playable by itself because it's just such a good roadblock against aggro. Puts 4 power for 3 mana on the board against, when you're trying to pressure them. But if you want to talk synergies, yes, when you start blinking is when things get really filthy.
Elite Spellbinder card's been really good.
It's good. Yeah, you in any assertive deck, it's good. It's good. It's decent with blink stuff though. It doesn't go completely nuts. And overall, I would say Elite Spellbinder always makes the cut.
I feel like I think Cube is one of its best places to be as well. Because there's some type of cards that you can take, and just by virtue of exiling them, your opponent was never going to actually cast them. If you ever see Emrakul in their hand, it's that one, right? And then all of a sudden they're well, I have all these cheaty things and I can't get access to my big payoff. Next this is going to be high on the list, Flicker Wisp.
Yeah, Flicker Wisp is really good. Flicker Wisp has tons and tons of combos. And you've watched and played a ton of Cube at this point. How often have you seen someone cast a Flicker Wisp and have the trigger not do anything?
It's very rare where they have to do the shame hit their land Flicker Wisp.
Yeah.
It's very rare. Yeah. Almost every time they're blinking irrelevant ETB, they're resetting something that wanted to be reset. They're killing a token on the other side. It feels like if you keep your imagination open, Flicker Wisp is kind of the thing that does everything.
Yeah, Flicker Wisp, I think really just has so much you can do with it, even when you're not trying to maximize it. And then when you are trying to maximize it, it goes really, really hard.
The other thing that I like to keep in mind, especially with these first 4 cards we've had out of the 3 drops here in white, is the ability to pressure planeswalkers, right? Some of the most powerful mid-range plays that we talked about are planeswalkers now. And cards like all of these are really good at pressuring planeswalkers, right? The Spellbinder and the Wisp both have 3 power and flying. The Splicer puts out 4 power over 2 creatures, and Adeline puts out, an extra attacking creature plus however big she is. And these are good ways to, one well-timed removal or blink spell and then kill your planeswalker can be a way to turn it back around. Lauren of the Third Path is next.
I really like Lauren. It's a reclamation sage with multiple upsides. One that you can tap to have both players draw, which A, combos with things like Hull Breacher, Leovold, Bowmasters. Mm-hmm. B, you just do it at the end of their turn. You get first crack at it. And if you're aggressive and emptying your hand and your opponent has 5 cards in hand, that extra card's worth a lot more to you. The other thing is it's a legend. So Caracas Lauren for repeatable kill your artifacts or enchantments is really good.
And the blinking stuff that we've talked about. It also has vigilance, so we'll throw that in. What about Monastery Mentor? Where are we at on that these days?
I'm a little lower on Monastery Mentor, honestly.
I am too.
It's okay, but I don't feel like it's like a windmill slam by any stretch. It's just a little slow because it's not just a 3 mana play. You play it on 3 mana and then you need to play spells afterwards in order to make it work.
That's right.
And that's a pretty big ask.
Right. It does demand an answer in the right build, but also the fact that it's white means, because it really wants to be in a blue-red deck. So you have to splash for it or kind of work your mana around getting Monastery Mentor in. And a lot of times you're just I have a Lelia, I'm fine. I'm not going to mess with this Mentor. Recruiter of the Guard.
I like Recruiter. You do need a little bit of synergy to go with it. This is one where you either want blink effects or really high value creatures because it's a little slow. It's not the fastest card in the world, and you definitely have to kind of maximize it. It's one of the better cards to you go get a Flicker Wisp, then you flicker the Recruiter and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not a card that you're can afford to play unless you're really good at accelerating, like you have birds and elves or moxes, or you're just really getting some high value cards. It can get Solitude, which is really nice.
Yeah, the cards it can get are amazing. The question is, do you have the toolbox or do you have the combos or the really powerful stuff to go get? And if you do, you can play it, but it does feel slow. This next one's good, Skyclave Apparition. Just the fact that the thing doesn't come back as the thing.
Yeah,
right,
it comes back as something
so huge.
That's basically always worse.
Right. It's just worse, especially in a cube environment where anything that you're exiling with this is going to be way better than just a random 3/3 or 4/4 or whatever.
And
I value it highly.
I think Skyclave is awesome. It's good in any deck that can cast it.
Yeah. And then the last one is your favorite, Steel Seraph.
Steel Seraph is good. Steel Seraph, I've been told.
You're like the only one that says Seraph. I'm not doing that. You got on me about what's it called. I'm not going to go down this road with you. This card's like, I think it sucks. Like this is another classic. My opponent taps 3 mana and I'm like, don't be Adeline, don't be Blade Splicer, don't be Spellbinder. And then they play Steel Seraph and I'm like, oh, good. Yeah, fine. You got a 3/3. Congratulations. I know it's fine. It does add damage to the board. I have lost to it. But of the 3 mana options that my opponent could play, it's almost always the one that I hope that they're playing.
Yeah, I think I'm a little higher on it than that, but I think that it's still quite strong.
Okay. And it definitely sees extensive play.
Yeah, I mean, it's a card I think you often lose to when it's like, all right, well, I have this board stabilized, and then they're like, play this, give a thing flying, attack in the air for 3. Next turn, I'm going to get attacked for 6 in the air. Mm-hmm. Or you're racing and it gives lifelink. But it does fall behind a lot of these other ones. This is one of those cards that is like clearly the reward for drafting mono white, not a reason to do so.
You get it late and it's totally good. Okay, what's your GOAT for the 3 drops? I have it down to Flicker Wisp and Adeline. Those are my finalists. And I know who I think wins.
Honestly, I think it's Skyclave Apparition.
Oh, okay.
I think it's tough because Skyclave is just good in so many different decks.
True.
And that's a big part of the reason I like it.
Okay. It's interesting because that's the same reason that I picked my winner, which is Flicker Wisp.
Yeah, Flicker Wisp, but they're all really close. I mean, they are very, very good.
I wonder what our listeners think. 4 drops, Hero of Bladehold. Is it still good enough? We have said that we want that the curve is often lower on your kind of finishers now. Is this one of them?
Yeah, I think the curve. I think this one is good enough.
It's a very scary card. Hits the board.
Yeah.
Got to kill it. You're going to die to it real quick. So I agree. But Palace Jailer, come on.
Yeah, Palace Jailer is. I mean, we already know this is the best 4-drop. Palace Jailer is just busted. Any deck that can cast it, it's good. But it's a card. It's worth making a deck so you can cast it. Like yes. If I'm playing, let's say heavy blue with a couple of black cards going into pack 2 and I open Palace Jailer, this is one of those cards I'm like, okay, what if I minimize the black and start to go into blue white? Like Palace Jailer is like a top 20 cube card, like overall.
It is busted. Card is stupid. The way that they did the Monarchy with this one and that they don't get the card back until they actually take the Monarchy. Like they should get their card back if they kill the Jailer, like even just from a flavor, like kill the Jailer, you get your guy out of jail, right? Like that's how that should go. And it doesn't work like that. It's everything you want. Restoration Angel. Card's a house.
Resto's good. Resto does go late sometimes because you have to either have combos or be really aggressive for it to be something that you want. And not every deck is into it. Yeah.
There's just so many combos that it almost never doesn't hit something, right? Although I did see once when you had Steel Seraph and Resto, which is a non-bow, not a combo. Speaking of non-bows with Sarah Angel or Restoration Angel, there's Sarah Paragon.
Sarah Paragon is actually one of the ones I've been liking a lot recently.
Oh, okay. I haven't tried it yet.
It's you do need some cards that work well with it, but when you have those, I think it does the trick. Like it gets there. You end up in a spot where like you replaying Fetch Land, Wasteland, or Strip Mine. You only get to do it once because it gets the Exile clause. But Sarah Paragon replay a land is a great start. White Weenie has a lot of cards that are cheap. So like this is more of a like begrudging finisher in a white aggro deck, or in like a white green or white black deck, like a value engine. So not a high pick by any stretch, but a card I believe has earned its inclusion in the cube.
And of course the GOAT is Palace Jailer out of the 4s. 5s, Boonbringer Valkyrie. This is the one that replaced what's it called? Baneslayer.
Yeah, Baneslayer hasn't even been in the cube for a long time. I think this card is fine. I don't really know.
I don't think it'll be in the cube for that long.
Yeah, I don't really know what the prognosis is on this one. Like,
Yeah, to me, it's just a sideboard card. Like your mid-range white deck brings it in against red or an aggro deck, but I don't think it's that good. What is Guardian Scale Lord? I don't actually know what this is. 4 and a white for a 3/4. The backup 1 flying. Whenever this creature attacks, return target non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is this creature's power.
so this is basically a better Sun Titan if you have a creature in play.
Okay, because you get it right away.
Yeah, so you get to. Let's say you have a 3/3 in play. You go Scale Lord, put a counter, attack, bring a 4 mana permanent back.
That's really good. Yeah.
And then the next turn, the Guardian can attack and bring a 3 mana permanent back.
Yeah.
And
okay. I guess the question is just what home does this have? You know, the 5 mana slots, you really need game winners. I would assume that you'd prefer any of the 4 drops over this, for example, in white.
yeah, this is not a high priority, but it has good effect. Again, cards that cost 5 and 6 mana, like you just don't have to prioritize them. It's just not necessary to do so.
Karmic Guide?
This is one I don't play that often, but it can be very good.
Yeah, there's some blink potential, there's some reanimation potential, so you can do some stuff with it, but not a high priority for any deck. Kenrith the Return King.
I haven't really played with this one much.
I don't really know.
Yeah, I haven't played with this one much, but my guess is that it's just super replaceable.
That's what I think too. It does a bunch of cool stuff, but it's just these 5 mana finishers are not hard to find. And then, spoiler alert, this one's going to be the GOAT for the 5 mana slot. Solitude.
Oh, yeah, Solitude, one of the best white cards. It's just so good.
This is a type of card that's actually pushed these curves that you were talking about earlier down, right?
Yeah. And because it's great to cast on 5 mana, but also you can just pitch cast it and, it works out really, really well when you do that.
That's right.
It's got all the blink combos. Obviously, the Ephemerate Solitude combo is great, but even just going like on 4 mana, Solitude Resto, kill 2 of your creatures, end up, for 4 mana, end up with a 3/4 flyer and a 3/2.
So you mean pitch it, blink it before the other thing resolves?
Blink it before the evoke.
It's just gross. It works well with reanimation, blinking, hard casting, or pitching.
Yeah.
This card is just unbelievable. One of the best white cards, full stop, in the cube. There's only one 6-drop right now, and it's Sun Titan. I've seen you actually play this, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's a playable card.
You did have a Black Lotus, but...
Yeah, that is one of the cards that makes me want to play the card. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not a card I actively take. I frequently get it with, around 5 cards in the pack, that sort of thing. If you have a lot of powerful 3s, it can be the 6-drop you want, especially if you have some acceleration. But it's not a card I go out of my way to try to play.
And then there's 1/7. It's Elishnorn Grand Cenobite. This is the +2/+2 -2/2 Elishnorn.
Yeah, this is edging on towards reanimate target.
Yeah.
Where you're not really looking to cast this very often. No. Sometimes you can. I mean, you can. This is more of a sideboard card against for creature matchups where you're like, I'm white-green. I pick up Elishnorn in the sideboard, and then I play against like a green deck or a white deck, or mid-range black. Well, black's even a little worse because they can kill it more easily. But if you play against mono green, you really want to board this in,
right,
and try to ramp into it.
I mean, because a lot of times just it hitting the battlefield will do enough work for you, let alone if it sticks around. Last one is strictly a reanimation target, and it's Iona, Shield of Emeria. The 9-drop.
Is basically not castable, and it's just a card for Reanimator.
So how good is it in Reanimator? I mean, it's like the 7th or 6th best reanimation target or something. It's like
it doesn't even work with like the Shallow Grave Corpse Dance type stuff. So
right,
yeah, it's pretty mediocre in Reanimator.
I find it that way too. It is powerful once you get it on the battlefield. In certain decks, it can be even if they're heavy blue with a little bit of red or something, you can lock them out. But it's just the problem is that it's up against it's the backup plan, right? If you didn't get an Archon, if you didn't get one of the actually good reanimation targets, then you're like, okay, fine, I guess I'll run Iona. It is almost never castable in those decks as well. Okay, there's a few planeswalkers here. First one is Elspeth Knight Errant. This just feels like too slow and from another era at this point to me. Still powerful. I mean, I'm not dissing it like that you can't play it, but I just, I don't get excited when I see this card in the pack.
Yeah, I am not I'm not super in for Elspeth at this point. Like, if you have to play it in your white weenie deck because you're just short on things to do, then that's fine. But it's not something that I'm gonna actively take at this point.
It almost always just becomes a 4-mana +3/+3 and flying as well, because you're just trying to finish them off. Next is Gideon, Ally of Zendikar.
Gideon is better than Elspeth. It's a little bit more aggressive. It, I think, can put yourself in a better spot. I think that almost every white deck will play it. It's not that good in control, but it's okay. Like, you can still put it in your deck and it'll be fine.
And this is also part of the reason why cards like these, while we're both kind of like, it's fine. It's because, like, the Wandering Emperor, right? Yeah. Like, that's the one I want.
That's way better in control and still good in aggro. So
exactly, it
has flash. Like, it kind of does a lot of the things that you're hoping to do. And I like the Wandering Emperor more for sure.
For sure, and it goes into all archetypes that can cast it. Gideon Jura. Does Gideon Jura deserve his spot in the cube still?
I don't really think so. I think Gideon Jura is pretty bad.
I think so too. It does do a few interesting things, and it can shut out certain types of things. The twin combo it can delay, or there's some weird stuff like that. But it doesn't really hold its own. And then the last planeswalker for white is Elspeth, Sun's Champion. So that's the 6-mana Elspeth.
Yeah, this one I think is kind of on its way out too. Like, I do too. I don't tend to play Elspeth, Sun's Champion very often.
No, I mean, it looks like it's supposed to be the end game for like a control deck, but usually your end games can come at 4 or 5 mana. You don't need to spend 6, and so this one falls to the side. Instance, Enlightened Tutor.
This one is super narrow, but it is good in the right deck. Like, when you are playing an Underworld Breach combo deck and you can get Lion's Eye Diamond or Breach, it's good. Don't put this card in to go get your Oblivion Ring type effect or whatever. That sort of thing, I think, works pretty poorly.
Yeah. This is one of the weakest tutors in the cube.
Yeah. This is one of those, one out of every 20 drafts, you might have a deck that wants it. But if I have Sylvan Library and Crucible of Worlds, I'll consider playing this card. But even then, I probably won't. It's not the best for sure. Of
the 5 planeswalkers, Wandering Emperor's the GOAT? Current GOAT?
Yeah, I would say so, yes.
Okay. Next is on Instance is Ephemerate, which, I always used to have it in that Anticipate slot where it was I could do some cool stuff, but no, I just need to just do the cool stuff and not get cute. But I think this makes the cut more often than it used to.
Yeah, I think
Solitude and stuff.
I think Ephemerate's a card you almost never take the first time you see it in a pack, but it's a card that can be really good in the right deck.
Yeah, I've seen you do gross stuff with it, and like I said, Solitude's a big one. Anything that you can pitch, Grief, that type of stuff too. Those things do hit the battlefield, as we mentioned before. They are there for you to ephemerate them, and they do not disappear when they come back. And you get double triggers. I mean, you can absolutely annihilate somebody's board or hand with Solitude or Breach or Grief, or the red one, whatever it's called. I can't remember now.
Fury.
Thank you, Fury. It used to feel a little bit more win more to me, but now it feels like something that I actually just want to be doing. March of Otherworldly Light.
I think this one's decent. I haven't played with it much, but I think it is actually good enough, is my guess.
Okay. I mean, it does hit artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. Those are kind of the bread and butter of permanence for cube. So that should be good. Yeah.
And the pitch ability is not one you want to employ, but a card that you could cast for 1 mana to have a good effect on the game. I'm not going to complain about that. I'm gonna be okay, that actually is good enough.
Next is Path to Exile.
Great removal spells. Good in any deck that can cast it. Even worth splashing. You've got a blue-red deck and you have a little bit of fixing. Path is a fine splash. It's just 1 mana, exile, instant speed, just checks all the boxes. Way worse than Swords, because Swords is basically busted. But Path at the point in the game where you mostly cast it, the land is not a huge drawback. It's still a drawback, obviously, but you don't want to path on turn 1. But like when you path, their Worm Coil on turn 6, or you path their Primeval Titan, or even you path their Hellrider, like you feel really good about the exchange. You're always exchanging up on mana, even if you then give them lands later.
Yeah. And it's also the type of card, along with this next one, Swords to Plowshares, that, there's a lot of times inflection points in a game where you're using up all your mana and things are happening and you go, if they don't have Path or Plow, I'm good here. And if they do, I'm way behind. And that's why these two cards are so great. And like I said, the next one is Swords to Plowshares. It's the best removal spell ever printed.
Yeah, still is. I mean, better than it. It's I think just the best white card as well. Like, I love Palace Jailer. I think I would still just take Swords, pick 1, pack 1 over Palace Jailer. It's just
it does so much work,
and it's super splashable. It also even has like things like Snapcaster Mage and Spellseeker that like maximize it. But you don't really need help. It's just a good card.
It's just amazing, yeah, and it's good against everything. Like a lot of the cheaty decks end up with creatures, right? Like ramp decks are trying to ramp to a creature a lot of the time. Cards like Tinker often will put out a creature that you can hit with Swords to Plowshares or Path. Right. Reanimation often results in a creature that you could hit with Swords to Plowshares, right? Like you're starting to see like, wait a second, a lot of the cheaty decks are cheating out creatures, and this handles it for 1 mana. And as you mentioned, against mono red or white, and it exiles them too. Last instant is Reprieve, new edition. This is a perfect spot for it too.
Reprieve is very cool. It's the white remand. It's actually even slightly better because it counters uncounterable things, because it just returns to hand. It doesn't actually literally counterspell.
Oh, interesting.
So like if they cast like Thrun is in the new 5 mana Thrun is here, and it's uncounterable, but Reprieve actually would still bounce it.
Okay. Yeah, this seems like a perfect spot for it. This is, white feels like it could use it even more than blue, right? And this is a classic like play a 1-drop, play a 2-drop, play a 3-drop, and then just protect your board type scenario.
Yeah. It's really good in any deck that can cast it, and most decks can cast it.
The goat of the instance is obviously Swords to Plowshares. Sorceries, Oust. You ever play Oust? I never play Oust.
Yeah, Oust is good in any control deck. It's not very good in aggro because the 3 life, isn't what you want, but it's good in any control deck.
Okay, you just buy yourself some time. What about Balance?
So Balance is one of the most powerful cards, but it takes a little finagling. So what Balance does is it equalizes cards in hand, lands, and creatures, right? And by equalizes, what you're trying to do is reduce as many of those categories down to like 0 as possible. The typical way to play Balance is in a creatureless deck, or not a creatureless deck, but one that doesn't have a lot of creatures in play. Because you want to end up in a spot where you cast Balance and it kills all your creatures. You probably end up discarding because they have more stuff in play.
Yep.
But that's not a big deal. That is usually okay. And then you want to maximize the number of things that you have that aren't counted by Balance. And that's like a complicated way to say you want a bunch of artifacts, enchantments, and planeswalkers in play.
Yep. Those are the ways to get stuff out of your hand and on the board, and that Balance doesn't care about. Any artifact-based mana is super clutch for this, right? Any, Mox Diamond is great with Balance, like those type of cards.
Yeah, so like if you go like Sensei's Divining Top and then play a Talisman and then play Balance on turn 3 against an aggro deck, you'll probably discard some cards. You'll probably have roughly equal lands, but you blew up all their creatures and you got to store value and permanence in play, like cards like Sylvan Library, Mox's Talismans. Planeswalkers are great too. It doesn't equalize those, and those tend to be pretty good when you have a Balance going that kills all of their stuff.
So white weenie aggro decks don't want Balance, generally speaking. But what about, like, who does then? Like, do you have to build around it to put it in your deck?
To some degree. You don't want to be a super creature heavy deck. Like, that's just not going to work. But it's really good in control decks. Like, your average like white blue control deck is just going to be happy with Balance even if you don't do a lot of work to maximize it. The best place is like the artifact deck, that would want Mishra's Workshop, There's a new combo in the cube, a new old combo. Everything old is new again. Balance Zurin Orb. Zurin Orb's a 0-mana artifact. You sack a land to gain 2 life.
Yeah.
This is like a straight out of 96 combo or whatever, which I've actually been able to use so far, where you play Balance and then sack all your lands to Zurin Orb. So now they go to 0 lands and you go to 0 lands. And if you have ways to kind of maximize that, then you can really get a ton going there.
That's sweet. Yeah. And Balance is one of the more powerful cards. It is one of the few cards that can swing around a truly desperate situation. Like when your mind starts going, okay, well, what could they have? That doesn't work. That isn't going to do it. They could have that. No, that it's like, oh, Balance. Like that would actually do it. Next is Winds of Abandon.
This is not that good in control, but very good in aggro because it's a sorcery. And the ideal scenario is you kick Winds of Abandon against in like the aggro mirror, kill all their creatures. They get 4 or 5 lands. Who cares? They're just dead. You just attack them.
Then you just kill them, right? But if you do it the other way, do you play it in a white control-ish deck, a mid-range deck?
Try not to. I mean, it's certainly possible to do so, but I don't think it's fantastic.
One card that I've noticed one type of card that I've noticed that you seem to like more these days than before are catch-all 1-for-1s like Council's Judgment, and Vindicate is another one that comes to mind there.
Yeah, those are both just flexible enough. Vindicate can blow up lands, which is awesome. And Council's Judgment can blow up anything, even protection stuff, like it can kill Progenitus or True Name Nemesis or Hex Drinker, all that stuff, because it doesn't choose a target. It's just a really weirdly worded card. I think that those cards tend to be good in any deck that can cast them, and I consider them reasonably high picks.
Yeah, Council's Judgment just gets around everything. I've seen you play this one, though I haven't actually bothered to read it. It's Savine's Reclamation.
Yeah.
It gets something back from your yard or something?
Savine's Reclamation is okay. It's a 3-mana spell that gets a permanent, including lands, any permanent, cost 3 or less back. And then it also can get splashback for 5 mana. And if you flash it back, you get 2 back. So what you want is some really high value 3-mana things, like Teferi Time Raveler is actually one of the better ones. If you get that back, right, you end up, getting a lot of value there.
Okay. So who wants this card? It's probably too slow for White Weenie, right?
It's not a good White Weenie card. It's a hard card to use. I'm not saying you never use it, but it's not a card that you use very often.
Okay. Just doesn't slot in super well.
I like it out of the sideboard against aggressive matchups, and I like it if you have some really good like combo-ish type stuff to get back, but it's not a card that I'm usually going out of my way to get. You almost always get it very late, and usually you don't even end up main decking it.
Armageddon.
Not strictly, but 95% of the time it's going to be in your mono white deck. In a small percentage of the time, it's going to be in the Crucible lands, Wrenn and 6 style decks. But even then, I don't like it very much because those decks are almost always behind on board. So casting Armageddon is like, how often does this take you from a game you're winning to a game a game you're losing to a game you're winning? Almost never. The goal with Armageddon is to go 2-drop, 3-drop, Geddon, or 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, Geddon. Right. Basically, if you can get in with a good board presence, then you will often win.
It's also worth noting that Ravages of War is not in this cube anymore, so there's only the one Geddon. Wrath of God.
This is clearly just a control card. Like it's not a card that you want otherwise. It is good. I would always main deck it in control. It's gotten better as more creatures have kind of popped up, but it's not a card that I'm heavily prioritizing. Like this is the control equivalent of Student of Warfare. You get it like 7th pick, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to play this. But if you have to 2nd pick it or 3rd pick it, then you're probably not in the right place or doing the right thing.
Spectral Procession.
This is one that just kind of came back. Haven't played with it for a bit, but it's good if you're literally mono white, and it's kind of bad otherwise.
Yeah, that's kind of where I have it too. There's not enough token stuff to really care. Goat of the Sorceries, got to be balance, right?
Yeah, balance for sure.
And then our last section, there's 4 enchantments. The first one is Touch the Spirit Realm, which is
so it's a weird Oblivion ring.
thing.
It can't hit planeswalkers. It gets artifacts and creatures. Can't hit enchantments either. But what it can do is you can pay 1 and a white and discard it to flicker an artifact or enchantment, which gives it some like additional value, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like it's like a removal spell you can play in the blink deck that every now and then you can use as a blink or vice versa, like depending on what the primary mode is going to be.
Is it any good?
I never liked the Oblivion ring cards.
Terrible. Yeah.
So
I mean, and the one saving grace of the Oblivion ring cards is that they're at least catch-alls. Like at least it gets the thing that you want to get, even if it's fragile.
My inclination, having not played much with this, is I would play it if I was good. If you're the kind of deck that wants Ephemerate, then you should play this card. If you're not interested in Ephemerate, then this card is probably not good enough.
3 cards left, and we finally get to the big dog. Parallax Wave. Your boy.
Oh, baby. So
it's here.
So this, we can read this one. This is 2 white enchantment, comes into play with 5 counters on it. You remove a counter to exile a creature until Parallax Wave goes away. It leaves the battlefield. And it has fading, so every turn, every upkeep, you remove a counter. And when you can't remove a counter, then you sacrifice Parallax Wave. All the creatures come back. Mm-hmm. Parallax Wave is... Oh, here's a good way to describe it. Imagine if you got Plague Wind plus, so it kills all their creatures, plus like Steely Resolve or Heroic Defiance. It protects all yours. They can't kill any of yours because they try to kill any of yours, you flicker it out. Mm-hmm. And it's got combos where you get to, Flicker Wisp, Parallax Wave, right? You get to re-trigger all your ETBs because it's kind of like a blink too. It's like a combination, protect your creatures, blink your creatures, kill their creatures. But it does all of that. So here's a common board situation. You have 2 creatures, they have 2 creatures. Play Wave, exile your 2 creatures, attack you. Next turn they play a creature. You go, okay, exile it also. Parallax Wave fades down to 1, attack you with my 3 creatures. Next turn, Parallax Wave fades down to 0, attack you and you're dead.
Right.
Never came back. Or you're like, play Parallax Wave, flicker your creature, attack. They're like, all right, kill one of your creatures. Okay, flicker my creature with Parallax Wave, it's gone. Next turn they do something, you play another creature, you flicker your other creature with Parallax Wave because they both have ETBs. Now the wave comes back and you get your Blade Splicer plus your Flicker Wisp trigger or whatever.
Right.
It just does like all the things. It's really, really, really good.
It really is. It kills tokens. It makes it so they can't defend their planeswalkers. I've seen you do some resetting of Parallax Wave, though. It gets a little bit complicated.
Right. So there's actually an infinite loop. A loop that can keep happening with now that Leonin Relic Order's back. Because let's say you have a wave in play. You're like, Relic Order, target the wave. In response, use the wave to exile Relic Order. So Relic Order leaves. Wait, hold on. Am I doing this right? No. Relic Order the wave. Mm-hmm. Wait, the loop is you can play Relic Order and target the wave.
And then target the Relic Order with the wave.
And then target the Relic Order with the wave. Yeah, okay. And then target Relic Order with the wave. Then the Leonin Relic Order ability resolves, mm-hmm. and the wave leaves play.
Right.
So then the Relic Order comes back, and the Relic Order, and then the wave comes back because the Relic Order is gone, right. And then so you can just keep basically exiling and get an infinite. Like mm-hmm. it lets you just keep cycling through that loop.
I've also seen just the Flicker Wisp thing.
Yeah, just flickering.
Which doesn't let you do it perpetually, but I mean the truth is like one of the things that you realize when you play Parallax Wave is that the game usually ends before it gets faded down anyway. Like you do not need to extend your Parallax Wave situation longer than it already gives you in most scenarios because your opponent just dies. Like that happens all the time if you have any board presence at all. Yeah.
Parallax Wave is at its best in aggressive decks. I will play it in my control decks, but if you have 0 creatures in your deck, Parallax Wave isn't really going to be maximized.
Right.
Like it's going to be kind of poor, actually.
So how good is it? I mean, I know that I've seen you first pick it. I've seen you, continually move it up your pick order. Like what tier is it at this point? I've also never seen you lose while having resolved it, and you played a lot.
Yeah, I would say that it is one of the top 5 white cards. I think it's like, just off the top of my head, Swords to Plowshares, Palace Jailer, Solitude, Parallax Wave, something along those lines.
Yeah, it's in that. That's a good way to frame it. It's in that category now. And keep your mind open on cool stuff you can do with it, because it is busto. 2 more. Elspeth Conquers Death. That probably just needs to go, right?
Yeah, I think Elspeth Conquers Death is probably it's pretty mediocre. It's basically a little bit worse than all the other 5 mana plays. Like,
yeah, for me, it's like, wait, you mean it's expensive and slow? You know, it's like, oh, I can get both.
What I usually do with Elspeth Conquers Death is sideboard it. I played in the sideboard against someone playing like expensive cards, and then it's good because not even every deck will have good targets for it. It's kind of the problem.
Right. Last card is Leyline Binding. So I guess this is a plant for like a 5-color deck, or just paying off for Triumphs or something like that.
Yeah, it has been good. I think that it's a playable card if you can get to 4 land types, is basically what I've found. Mm-hmm. It's not a card that I'm like the most excited in the world about, but if you pick it up late, it's actually fine.
You consider it, like, how close is it to Oblivion Ring status for you? Because I know that you don't like those, but also this can be cheaper and have flash, so you theoretically could get something that Oblivion Ring couldn't, or when it couldn't, but it does still have the problem of sitting on the battlefield with whatever you have underneath it. They're Inferno Titan ready to come back out if they can blow up the Leyline Binding.
I like it quite a bit more than Oblivion Ring, just because, look, the problem I have with Oblivion Ring is it doesn't actually do anything. Like, when it rarely works, basically, is the problem I have. Like, yeah, when it works, you get a 1-for-1, and that's not fantastic. You got to trade your 3 mana for their mana, and then when they kill it and get their ETB again, like you said, it's just a disaster for you. The problem with that is that, like, when it works, you got no advantage, and when it doesn't work, you got wrecked. Where I do like these effects is in Leyline Binding, because at least the upside of Leyline Binding is there. Mm-hmm. When you get to Leyline Binding at instant speed for 1 or 2 mana, you feel like you got a real advantage.
Definitely. At least a tempo hit in your favor, where you end step took out a blocker, killed their planeswalker, or whatever, something like that. Okay. Well, there's white. That's it. Those are the white cards. Kind of interesting. Of the 5 colors, white has 40 creatures, which is second only to green, which has 42. But then it's red at 32, and then black and blue both have 27 creatures. So white is definitely one of the more creature-centric, and you mentioned earlier that you thought that the cube was kind of moving in that direction, so I guess that makes sense. You said before, just to put kind of a cap on it, mono white, definitely a way to go if you enjoy playing that archetype, or if you're looking to win.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good deck. It's powerful. It's fast. It has cards like Thalia that punishes the kind of unfair decks. Cards like Swords to Plowshares and Mother of Runes and Solitude, Parallax Wave are great against the creature decks. It's just a great deck, and you don't need to splash, but splashing is a little better in mono white than it is in red, I think, because white can win a late game with a lot of these cards. Red is a little less good at winning late games. Like, red's late game is top deck Chain Lightning or Fire Blast. White's late game is, draw cards off Palace Jailer, blink my Parallax Wave. That can beat anything. Mm-hmm. So I think that you are a lot more likely to win a long game with white, which does mean that splashing other colors, A, is less costly if you're a little slower, and B, other color cards can synergize with white. Black's discard or blue's card draw or counterspells. Like, an assertive white deck that plays Mana Leak, Force of Negation, and Mystic Confluence is totally fine. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to prioritize lands. You can't just play 9 plains, 8 islands, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I 3-0'd a team draft recently with a deck that had like Smuggler's Copter, Adeline, Hero Bladehold, Skyclave Apparition, but also had Miscalculation, Mana Leak, Force Negation.
Yeah.
And those cards actually do combine nicely. Like casting 2-drop, Selfless Spirit into Adeline and then forcing their turn 3 play is just a fantastic opener. So white has a little more flexibility, whereas red doesn't want to add those cards. They don't want to put Thoughtseize in their deck, and they don't want to put Blood Crypt in their deck. They just want to play Firebolt and Fire Blast.
Right.
On the other hand, adding blue cards, the counter spells are at least okay. But the fact that the lands and the game plans make the red decks worse, but make the white decks better, is why I think white can splash better, which ultimately makes white, I think, a better deck. Like Noble Hierarch into a white 3-drop is fantastic. I actually really like white green. Playing birds and Hierarch into, Flicker Wisp type cards, or, turn 2 Adeline or turn 3 Hero Bladehold is great. Playing Noble Hierarch and then having a red card in your hand is usually not going to be that good.
One last thing I wanted to bring up, because we did talk about it last time when we had Ryan on. They did take White Plume Adventurer out.
Yep.
I know that you were in favor of that, though you kind of got used to playing it, I think, in the slightly altered version of this cube, the one that Alpha Frog has. Steel Seraph is actually what replaced it. What are your thoughts on that at this point?
I still maintain that the cube's better off without White Plume. I had this discussion on Twitter the other day with some people who the impetus was someone said, like, the way to balance initiative is to add initiative cards to every color, not just white, not remove initiative. The boomers who like Underworld Breach and Brain Freeze have won. And my response to that, and again, you can look through my Twitter replies to find it, is balance and fun are not like they're not in lockstep. I've said this so many times on this show. Mm-hmm. The way to balance White Plume, I don't care about balancing White Plume, and I don't want to add 6 more initiative cards to the cube. I think that is the cube more fun with White Plume Adventure in it? And my inclination is to say no, because I think a lot of the cube audience is people who don't play Magic Online in between these cubes. They hear the cube is up, and they're like, oh, I want to play cube. I've played with all these cards, or at least most of them. I'll learn a couple new ones, and it'll be fun. Cube is awesome. And then they have someone play a White Plume Adventure against them, and it's not like, is it too much to expect them to read the cards? Was one of the responses. It's like, have you read White Plume Adventure? It doesn't tell you what the card does.
No, you have to read it and a mysterious other card that you don't, that you have to click around and memorize and do all this extra stuff for. Yeah, I still think it's better to have it out, though. I will say that it has been interesting to watch it get played in the cube that you played on the server, because when mono white plays it, I feel like it's too much. But when you've been putting it in like your green white or black white decks, it's like really nice to have like a super punchy card to play on 3 if you do manage to get like a mana dork down or something, like a Mox or an elf or something. I saw you do really well with a green white deck, and it was like White Plume Adventure was a big part of the reason for that. And it did make me think that having a very powerful 3 was really good. I just feel like the combination of it being too complicated and kind of annoying to figure out, and then also just too powerful. I mean, that trap, like 5 damage, like what? It's so much.
What happens is you play White Plume, next turn you forge, make it a 5/5 attack for 5. Next turn you trap, attack for 5, and they're already at 5, and it's like turn 5.
Right.
And you did nothing but cast 1 spell.
Right.
And if you played it on turn 2 with a Mox or an Elf or something, look, I don't think power level is the reason to remove it. It's still not the best card in the cube, though it is very good.
Mm-hmm.
The reason to remove it, I think, is it puts a really high burden of learning what the card does for people who haven't played a lot with this, and also completely warps the game around it, more so than even something like Black Lotus. And also Black Lotus has the historical context. Like Black Lotus gets a pass forever in Vintage Cube. Mm-hmm. And White Plume doesn't have to. Like, we don't have to put every card that's good enough on power level that's really poorly designed in the cube. Like, cube should be a curation of the best of Magic, not the worst of Magic. And I think White Plume and Initiative are just horrendous designs, 0 out of 10. So why are we including them? Because they're good enough. Like, yeah, it is good enough. I'm not arguing that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I agree. I think it should be. I don't think that we should have cards like I think that part of the conceit to Magic is, roughly speaking, that you have to keep all the text on the card. If there's a little bit extra, that's fine. If there's a little bit extra that covers a large range of cards, okay. But if there's a lot extra, including options, like it's not just memorizing what's on, the dungeon style cards. It's also like, what choices do I have? Like, I actually have to make a choice as I go through these. It's not just one pathway, like sort of like the One Ring, right? I feel like it breaks the contract a little bit. It kind of, it's like, you got to show me on the card what the thing does with a little bit of wiggle room there, but not a whole extra complicated card's worth of text.
Look, if I haven't played Magic in 5 years and I fire up Vintage Cube and my opponent plays Adeline, I'm not like, oh my God, what's happening? You read Adeline, you're like, well, okay, this is a good card. I'll figure out kind of how this plays. When they play an initiative card, it's just not the same experience. Like, oh, I have to read a flow chart that has 9 things on it.
You have to read a flow chart.
It's just literally a flow chart.
Right.
So what's the kind of the upside of that? I just don't. Well, the upside is that it's a powerful card that leads to had a different gameplay, and that's all fine and good. But I still don't think that it's worth. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. I don't think we should put it in. Okay. And I'm glad they removed it. That said, if at some point they bring it back, I wouldn't like overly complain. I'm fine playing with the card. I'm not even that opposed to it. Like in terms of my own play experiences with the card, like it's a powerful card, and it leads to the gameplays it leads to. I just think that like considering especially the audience of people for the Magic Online Cube, I would not choose to include it if I were in charge, and I'm glad that Ryan chose not to include it.
Yeah, I'll say what Ryan said about it. He said White Plume Adventurer was unfun good. Still working out what the right amount of such cards is in the Vintage Cube, but for White Plume Adventurer, we don't intend to bring it back without other initiative creatures and in a no-holds-barred context. He says, would you prefer an unfun good card or two, properly supported in each iteration, or would you prefer an occasional pure power iteration that doesn't cut powerful cards for their play patterns? In the meantime, Steel Seraph returns to fill the white 3-drop role while doubling as a big artifact for decks that care. So there you go.
Yeah, perfectly reasonable.
I think so too. And I feel the same as you. If they put it in, I wouldn't freak out. I just think it's like not a great step. I just don't think it's a good, I think it's like we should not, like if they want to make weird products that go into, like I don't like that it's in Legacy either. I don't like.
Well, it's not anymore.
Did they ban it?
Yeah, that got banned a couple months ago.
Okay, well, I guess I wasn't alone on that. But even then, that was for power level, I'm sure, and that's not actually the problem I have with it. But all right, well, let's call it good there. Hopefully this is helpful for people who are looking for some deep dive cube content. We've got more coming as well. We're going to cover the other colors. And then we also have an episode the next time we get Ryan on with one of our patrons that has set up some really great topics for us as well. So we love Cube. We're going to continue to talk about Cube. It's kind of evergreen at this point for us on the show, and we hope that you enjoy it as well. That is going to do it.
This has been a great idea. Also, no one's ever done a full cube card by card cube breakdown that I'm aware of, and I think this is cool. It's something different, and I'm curious what people think about it. And you know what? I think Cube is awesome. There's Cube all the time now, especially since I got to give a shout out to draftmancer.com. That's the site we use to draft. You can put any set you want up there. So like if you want to draft Arena Cube with your friends and play on Arena, you can definitely do that. If you want to draft, Vintage Cube, also with like card rental services on Magic Online, you can do it without breaking the bank. You can also make a cube with slightly cheaper cards. Like if you cut the 20 most expensive cards from the cube, which isn't even the power, by the way, it's things like the One Ring and Orcish Bowmasters, then you could totally have a cube experience without having to outlay even that much money. And that I think is awesome. So there's really no excuse not to do some good cubing.
Yeah, for sure. And get in there. It might be a little intimidating at first, but it's really awesome. And like we said, we'll go over the rest of the colors as well over time. We kind of want these to stand on their own, again, the core group of cards doesn't turn over that often. Of course, there'll be a few cards that are new and a few cards that rotate out as they go. But, the base cards are still there and the archetypes still usually stay intact based on that. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. Pretty much everywhere you can find everything related to the show over at lrcast.com. And we want to say thank you once again to our patrons for supporting us. We really do appreciate it. That's going to do it for this one. We'll see you next week.
So, Marshall, are you familiar with the show The Bear?
The Bear? No, I think I maybe heard the name, but I don't even know what it's about.
It's gotten some traction. No, it's about a restaurant.
Okay.
It's on Hulu, and it's basically about this guy from Chicago who was like a chef at like some of the best restaurants. It's a completely fictional story.
Okay.
And he comes back home to Chicago, where his brother who died was running like one of those like the Chicago beef, sandwich type places, old school places. And he's like his dream is to like turn it into a fine dining restaurant. Right.
Okay.
Great show. It's in season 2. I really like it. But my point is, it makes running like a restaurant or working in the restaurant industry look so bad, like because it's like so stressful. Your hours are crazy. You're sitting in the kitchen getting yelled at constantly. Like 4 top. We need 6 fries, 7 beefs. We need this. We need that. You've got to do all this stuff. And then like opening a restaurant is like, you need to buy good forks. You need to buy good plates. You need to get a fire suppression system, and the city needs you to get 27 different kinds of permits. And, it takes years and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And from, I'm not, of course, the expert on this, but from my perspective, it looks like they have a lot of fairly accurate things. Like I would imagine shows these days, they do their research. They get people on the show who know these things to like, really like give you an inside look at this industry, right, as part of building this fictional world. And the thing that it really reminded me of is like the people who do this just love it. They love it. They are doing this because they want to do it. They are not doing this because the pay. They are not doing this because the benefits, because neither is like great. They're not doing this because it's easy. They're doing this because it's hard and stressful, and because they care, and because they want to get a Michelin star, because they want their other chef buddies to know that they did good. And you know what that reminds me of?
What's that?
Reminds me of playing Magic. It reminds me of a lot of these passionate things. There's not that many people in the if you look at the whole world who care about how many Pro Tour top 8s I have. But who cares? I care. And a lot of the people I talk to care. Like, I don't know, you care, right? Like you think it's really cool when I top 8 a Pro Tour. I like that. I value your opinion. I like that you think that, and that my friends and family think it's cool. And I didn't get into playing Magic because of the money. I didn't get into playing Magic because it was easy. I got in because I was passionate and it was fun for me. I loved it. And look, working in the restaurant industry is a lot harder job. I will just straight up say that. Like, I'm not trying to compare those things, but I just am echoed by when I see people putting their passion into something that from an outside perspective, the rewards don't seem to be there. I love that. It's kind of the same reason I like speedrunning. I look at speedrunners and I'm like, you're playing this same level literally 700 times because you care so much about trying to shave a second off this to get the world record. And that's so cool. Like, I care about that. I'm not even a speedrunner myself, but I care about that. And I think it's awesome. I think the world is a better place when people kind of follow the things they're passionate about, even if those things don't quote unquote make sense. Like, look, I know there's some people passionate about every kind of job, but there's a lot of jobs people get into because of the tangible rewards. And that's totally fine. That's a legit reason to do it. We do need lawyers who are just in it for the money, right? Like, we do need we need doctors who are just in it for the money. Like, I guess I'd argue doctors provide more of a good than lawyers, but I think they both do help society function. And not a lot of people, like, there's some jobs that aren't very glamorous. People get into them because of the rewards, and again, that's totally fine. I think the world is such a better place when people do this for the love of the game. It's kind of like, look, we use Draftmancer. The guy who programmed Draftmancer didn't do it because he's getting paid. He's not. I actually donated some money along with, I got some of the other guys who use it to do that because, like, hey, he spent a lot of time on this. He made this tool because he thinks it's sweet. He wants people to be able to draft Magic sets whenever they want from their browser. And the world is just such a better place because of people doing stuff like that, that I encourage you to find the thing that makes you feel that way because I think it's super rewarding. B, if you like seeing that sort of thing, The Bear is actually a really good show. It's a high stress show. It's one that has a lot of cool stuff going on. I would definitely you got to know that going in, but like, it is super cool. And I don't know. I think the world is basically a lot better given that people kind of follow these things, even if it doesn't make sense. I mean, you started the podcast because you and Ryan wanted to talk about Magic cards.
Yep, that's it.
That's why you started the podcast.
That's right.
And I think that's a cool thing to do. So I don't know. I guess all I'm trying to say is I like when people follow their passions. It's something that I found greatly rewarding, and I like watching it. I like watching when people do that too. I think it's a really, really fun place to be.